I am again thankful to all news media outlets for letting me use their contents. I greatly appreciate that. I am available 24/7 if they need any assistance. Now go to the headlines. Hi and very warm welcome at Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Following news headlines have been reported by world major English news channels and news agencies. So please watch it.
Around the world.
Hello and a very warm welcome. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak. These are the top stories. The White House texts war plans to bomb Yemen to a group chat that included the US Secretary of State, the head of the CIA, and a journalist for The Atlantic. A review now underway as to how the editor of that magazine was added to the group chat. He says he got an invite from National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Over 1,000 people arrested in Turkey for protesting. They were part of the massive demonstrations that have been ongoing for over 6 days there. People outraged over the arrest of the mayor of Istanbul, a key rival to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And Israel has killed at least 730 Palestinians in the past week in Gaza. That is, since Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the return of intensive airstrikes and ground operations there. Meanwhile, across in the West Bank, armed Israeli settlers beat up a Palestinian filmmaker who was then arrested by the military. Inadvertently including a journalist in a classified group chat about bombing Yemen, the White House confirms that The Atlantic magazine's editor was aware of US plans to strike hours ahead of any official announcement. The National Security Council in the US is now under review. The group chat included former Fox News host and now Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Vice President J.D. Vance, and other top officials. Elitza Gadava tells us more.
Mr. President, your reaction to the story in The Atlantic?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business.
The story in question is called "The Trump Administration Accidentally Texted Me Its War Plans," and it disclosed a shocking intelligence breach by top U.S. officials. On the 11th of March, Jeffrey Goldberg, The Atlantic's editor-in-chief, received an unexpected connection request on the commercial app Signal by a user identifying as Michael Waltz, presumably Donald Trump's national security advisor. 2 days later, Goldberg was added to a group chat where top Trump administration officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance, CIA boss John Ratcliffe, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, were actively discussing action against the Houthi rebels in Yemen.
I could not believe that the National Security Advisor to the President would be so reckless to include the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic in such discussions.
He thought he might be part of a disinformation campaign, but the tone of the messages was quite authentic.
If you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again.
I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic.
The text chain contained detailed information on the targets, weapons used, and the attack sequencing. On the 15th of March, Yemen's health ministry reported that more than 50 people were killed in the strikes. The U.S. Secretary of Defense denied that any information was mistakenly disclosed.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
That's it.
The National Security Council, however, said the text chain appears to be authentic. The security breach provoked outrage among Democrats.
President, this is one of the most stunning breaches of military intelligence I have read about in a very, very long time.
"You have to be kidding me," wrote Hillary Clinton on X. The Democrat was relentlessly attacked by Donald Trump during the 2016 presidential campaign for using her private email to send official communication when she was a Secretary of State.
With the temperament of Donald Trump. Good morning. State pension fury as rumours grow the triple lock could be axed.
As the government's attention now turns to housing, a £2 billion investment that we're going.
All of that to go with just one day until the spring statement.
Trump's top team takes a swipe at Europe, dubbing them freeloaders in a leaked WhatsApp message.
Some breaking news in the past few minutes. The Home Office announces it's no longer working with the main provider of migrant hotels.
The Conservatives renew their campaign for a national inquiry into rape gangs.
More money is set to be ploughed into protecting Britain's farms as rural crime rates rise.
Dipping your toe into the dating pool after 50 years of age. How tricky is it in this digital age? We're asking, is it ever too late to find love?
What went wrong for Blue Peter? The BBC access live episodes as the programme moves online after 66 years. One of the show's former presenters, Tim Vincent, will be joining us later on in the programme.
What would Shep and Petra say? In sport today, moans abound about England's performance against Latvia last night, which, yes, was a little bit dull, but they did win 3-0. As Wales turn in the World Cup qualifiers tonight, they're in North Macedonia, hoping to continue Craig Bellamy's very good unbeaten run as manager. And Emma Raducanu wins again, finds herself in the quarterfinals of the Miami Open.
Whilst it is going to turn quite cloudy with a bit of rain for quite a few of us through today, there's more spring sunshine on offer as we go through tomorrow. I'll have the details coming up.
And also coming up to 7:02. A very good morning to you on this Tuesday morning. I'm Eamon Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Okay, the breaking news we can bring you in.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on today's show. Calls for heads to roll at the White House after top secret war plans are accidentally leaked on a group chat.
Plus, a warning from the Bank of England that Donald Trump's tariffs and an ageing population could derail the Chancellor's spending plan.
And victory for England at Wembley. We'll talk about what we learned from Thomas Tuchel's first 2 games in charge.
Miles Skelly is the future. That's the conclusion. It's Tuesday, the 25th of March. Your headlines. It's amateur hour at the White House, say Democrats, after plans to bomb Yemen are accidentally shared with a journalist on a group chat.
Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Ticket users are driving more women to take their own lives. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, promises £2 billion for affordable housing ahead of tomorrow's spring statement. We'll speak to the government in the next few minutes. And just what was the spinning white spiral spotted in the skies above Britain? Good morning to you. There's been an extraordinary security breach at the White House. Good morning to you. There's been an extraordinary security breach at the White House. We'll be talking about that in just a moment. But first, Mari, massive 48 hours ahead for the government. We're going to be diving into that throughout the show.
We absolutely are. Not long to wait now until the spring statement, but then nonetheless, the Governor of the Bank of England coming out as a bit of a painful moment for the government, damaging their growth plan, saying actually we've got bigger problems, tariffs and an ageing population.
We're going to dive into that with Mari and those comments from the Bank of England Governor, and we'll be talking to the government, Matthew Penning, who you might have seen just walk past Mari, and he'll be joining us in about 10 minutes' time. Meanwhile, the White House has been left scrambling to explain how a journalist was included in a group chat about its plans to bomb Houthi rebels in Yemen. Democrats called it amateur hour, and there are calls for the president's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, to be fired. Sky correspondent David Blevins has this report.
This was supposed to be a top secret mission, but news of US strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen were accidentally leaked to a journalist who'd been added to a group chat on a secure messaging app.
I assumed that I was being spoofed or hoaxed or being included in some kind of disinformation campaign, because it was simply too improbable to me that they would have such poor operational security as to inadvertently invite the editor of The Atlantic into a national security discussion about the timing of a bombing campaign.
In that group chat were Vice President J.D. Vance, Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. They complained about bailing out Europe, debated the timing of the strikes, and posted emojis when they were done. The President's National Security Committee confirmed the veracity of the group, but that didn't stop the Defence Secretary attempting to discredit the journalist.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Home of the election.
Today, cost of living relief and Medicare in focus as the government prepares to hand down its fourth budget.
The Australian economy is turning a corner, and this is about building on that momentum.
Also ahead, 2 journalists among dozens killed in Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. Aid workers are calling for increased protection. White House officials accidentally include a US journalist in a national security group chat. And key venues and locations of the 2032 Brisbane Olympic and Paralympic Games about to be unveiled. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Childs. Treasurer Jim Chalmers is preparing to hand down Labour's fourth budget, saying the government has cost of living pressures front of mind. Treasurer says it will also reflect the rise in global uncertainty, warning Australia has a lot to lose from escalating international trade tensions. Political reporter Pablo Vinales has more from Parliament House in Canberra. Good afternoon, Pablo. So what's the government said we can expect from tonight's budget?
Ross, good afternoon. Well, Labor's pre-budget sell sounding more and more like an election pitch. We've heard Jim Chalmers this morning repeating the government's campaign slogan, building Australia's future. We know that after back-to-back surpluses, the budget will be returning to deficit for years to come. But Jim Chalmers is framing this in 3 words: repair, relief and reform. He joined the Prime Minister and Finance Minister this morning as the government prepares to sell this budget. And let's have a listen to what the Prime Minister had to say.
It's been a great task trying to land a 747 on a helicopter pad here, trying to get that inflation level down whilst making sure we maintain employment, increase wages and defend people's living standards by providing cost of living relief.
So the Prime Minister there speaking about the challenge the government has in addressing inflation and those cost of living pressures. It also comes against the backdrop of an uncertain global economy. The Treasurer Jim Chalmers speaking about concerns of an escalating trade war, namely through Donald Trump's America First agenda and another round of tariffs potentially on Australian imports on top of aluminium and steel. The concern among some industries here in Australia in the beef sector and in the pharmaceutical industries. The bigger concern that Jim Chalmers is speaking about, though, is the flow-on effects of a wider trade war, saying that the best defence against that is a resilient economy.
So the budget's
Hidden Histories, premiering 6th April, Sunday on CMA. This is Asia Now.
Hello, it's 3 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 12:30 in New Delhi, 2 o'clock in Jakarta and Angela Liu at this hour. South Korean acting President Han Duck-soo says he will do his best to weather a tariff storm triggered by the U.S. The statement comes a day after the Constitutional Court reinstated him. Japan and South Korea continue to grapple with wildfires, with strong winds hampering efforts to bring the flames under control. And Trump officials under fire over the mishandling of classified information. The White House admits plans to attack Yemen were mistakenly shared with a journalist in a group chat.
President Han Duck-soo has called on the government to ensure that national security and people's livelihoods are secured as the country braces for potential impact in light of U.S. tariffs which come into force next month.
지금 이 순간 우리의 소명은 국민의 안전을 지키고 통상 전쟁으로부터 국익을 확보하며 국회와의 협치를 통해 당면한 국가적 현안에 대한 해법을 조속히 마련하는 것입니다.
Mr. Han says he will do his best to weather what he calls the US-led tariff storm by tapping into his past experiences in trade and foreign policy. He also vowed to work alongside ruling and opposition parties to lead relief efforts for citizens who could be affected by the trade war. South Korea has been seeking exemption from reciprocal tariffs that are set to take effect in April. This follows threats by the US president, who singled out the country for applying high tariffs on American exports earlier this month. Mr. Trump has said that the Asian nation's tariffs were 4 times higher than those of the US. Heightened fears over a trade war come a day after Mr. Han was reinstated as acting president, following the Constitutional Court's decision to strike down his impeachment. Japan and South Korea are grappling with multiple wildfires that have ripped through hectares of land, with officials warning that high winds and rising temperatures are hindering efforts to put out the blazes. South Korean authorities say wildfires in the country's southeast have worsened overnight and are expected to intensify amid dry and windy weather. The defense minister
Africa News. The news. Angola has called it quits on the ongoing mediations pitting the M23 rebels, Congo and Rwanda after a series of failed negotiation efforts coupled with external interference. The announcement was made by the presidency of the Republic of Angola on Monday, March 24. After nearly 2 months as the African Union's chair, Angola acknowledged the need to step back from the mediating the DRC-Rwanda conflict to focus on broader continental priorities, including peace, infrastructure, economic development, and justice for Africans. Angola's mediation efforts have seen its ups and downs, with the M23 rebels last week rejecting mediations, citing sanctions by the international community. The negotiations were later overshadowed by an abrupt meeting between Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi and Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame in Doha, Qatar. The conflict has escalated recently, with the M23 rebels capturing key towns in North and South Kivu provinces, displacing thousands and worsening the humanitarian crisis. Despite diplomatic efforts, violence between the DRC and M23 continues, highlighting the urgent need for dialogue.
The United States has intensified its strikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels, claiming the elimination of key figures, including their top missile commander. National Security Advisor stated that American forces have targeted Houthi leadership, communication centers, weapon factories, and drone production facilities. The airstrikes, now in their 10th consecutive day, follow Houthi attacks on commercial shipping and threats to resume targeted vessels in the Red Sea. Since November 2023, the Houthis have launched over 100 strikes on merchant ships, resulting in the sinking of 2 vessels and the death of 4 sailors. One recent strike reportedly hit a building in the western district of capital Sana'a, killing at least 1 person and injuring 13 others. The US maintains that these operations aim to deter Houthi aggression and send a clear message to Iran, the group's main supporter. President Donald Trump has declared that Iran will be held accountable for any attacks by the Houthi group in Yemen.
The US and Russian negotiators met on Monday in Saudi Arabia for discussions on a partial ceasefire in Ukraine, following a round of talks between US and Ukrainian delegations earlier in the day, according to Russian state media. The negotiations took place at Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. Following this meeting, further discussions between US and Ukrainian teams are anticipated. The talks are focused on establishing a pause in long-range attacks by both Russia and Ukraine on energy facilities and civilian infrastructures. Additionally, the discussions aim to halt attacks in the Black Sea to ensure the safe passage of commercial ships. Early in the week, Ukraine and Russia tentatively agreed to a limited ceasefire.
On this day, 1 year ago, after months of tension and uncertainty, Bassirou Diomaye Faye won Senegal's presidential election. Faye's victory over established political figures was historic and raised the hopes of many in the country. His record so far is contested. So far, so good. We're confident it's going to work. But they have to accept criticism, because criticism has a positive side in that it allows you to improve. We haven't seen any of the promises from the government. They had asked us to fight by promising young people projects and assuring us that there would be work, but we haven't seen anything yet. Says his election fire has made interventions to reduce food inflation, conducted an audit of the previous government, and launched a plan to revitalize agriculture. But the opposition says it is not enough. This is indeed a disappointment. Insofar as the referential document is concerned, there are no projects they've launched that actually emanate from the referential called Senegal Vision 2050 to find mechanisms to revive our economy. The government, headed by Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, has launched a major campaign to clean up the administration, reduce waste, and optimize public resources. This analyst says the actions point to a good start. I consider the record to be generally positive. When you look at two laws, justice, which was a bit of a weak point, and which was much criticized, organized a conference on justice. Today, the relationship that some Senegalese have with public money is frankly not a very good one. People are embezzling all over the place, and it's a good thing they're doing it. Let the financial judiciary sanction it. Whatever the outcome of Bassirou Diomaye Faye's first year in power, the Senegalese still expect more from his government, especially on the social and economic front.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shekel 5858. I am Amir Shekel. Have a good life. Bye-bye.